This family entered court today, but only one will leave with the truth. The words resonated in everyone's mind as the double doors of the courtroom opened. It wasn't a typical case. This was a spectacle, a moment that had been years in the making. Reporters jostled for position, cameras clicking like lightning in a thunderstorm. The gallery was filled with voyeuristic onlookers, some dedicated Sister Wives fans, some merely there to see the fall of a formerly idolized family. The atmosphere inside was heavy with tension, almost palpable. It was as if everyone were holding breaths, not wanting to make even a sound for fear that it would trigger a blast of anarchy. The long wooden benches creaked as people shifted uncomfortably, whispering theories about what might happen. Every person there knew that today wouldn't just reveal family secrets, it would destroy reputations, shatter relationships, and possibly end marriages forever. At the defense table sat Kody Brown, the man at the center of it all. His stance was stiff, shoulders braced, chin up slightly like a man who would not stoop, even when the world stood against him. His countenance was a chilly mask, jaw locked so hard that a vein beat prominently beside his temple. He did not look at the crowd. He did not even look at the women whom he used to address as his wives. Two lawyers sat beside him, whispering frantically, sliding papers back and forth across the table, their fingers moving rapidly, like they were attempting to repair a ship that was sinking. But Kody wasn't hearing them. His gaze remained fixed on one point: the smooth wood surface of the table before him. On the other side of the courtroom, three women sat together in a row, something no one had ever witnessed in years. Christine, Janelle, and Meri. At one time, they had been allies, enemies, and now, something much more complicated. Old wounds had led them here, but grief and rage had forged a tentative alliance between them. Christine sat in the middle, fists tightly folded in her lap. She had grown older since fans had last seen her, but there was a new strength in her stance that had not previously existed. Her eyes were puffy from tears, but her chin was held high in silent defiance. Off to her right sat Janelle, shaking visibly. She continued to blot her eyes with a wadded tissue, mouthing prayers. Next to Janelle was Meri, as unflappable as ever. Her lips were set in a thin line, and her face was impassive. But the small shake in her hands gave away her calm facade. And then there was Robyn Brown. She did not join either group. She sat apart, alone, by a single vacant bench that stretched like an abyss between worlds. Her fists gripped a tissue so hard her knuckles were white, her own breathing harsh and irregular. Her eyes were puffy and red, evidence that she hadn't slept or ceased to cry through the entire night. Outside she resembled a mourning widow. But to the rest of them, she was the embodiment of betrayal, the woman most blamed for destroying the family. Whispers ran through the courtroom, like waves on a lake as everyone strained their necks to catch a glimpse. "Is that Robyn?" one of them whispered. "She's awful," another said. "Good. She had it coming," someone grumbled under their breath. The tension grew and grew until, bang, the loud crack of the judge's gavel broke through the din, freezing the room in an instant. "Order in the court," the judge snapped, his voice hard and authoritative. "This is a court of law, not a circus. There will be silence and respect while these proceedings occur." The mutters ceased at once. The only noise was the clicking of a photographer's camera in the distance, as the flash photographed Kody's face for an instant, frozen in time. The judge, a tall man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, adjusted his glasses and scanned the courtroom. His gaze was steady, almost surgical, as if he could see straight through every lie that had ever been told. He turned his attention to Kody and the women. "Today," he spoke slowly, deliberately, "we will listen to evidence that will reveal the truth behind the tragic circumstances that resulted in the loss of Garrison Brown and the ruination of what was once one of America's most hallowed families." The words lingered in the air like smoke, winding through the people and settling in their chests. A collective gasp swept the room. Some covered their mouths, others whispered frantically, unable to contain their shock. Christine flinched at the sound of Garrison's name, her body curling inward as if she'd been struck. Janelle gripped her hand tightly, whispering, "It's okay, we're here. We'll get through this." But her own voice cracked with emotion. Even Meri's stoic expression faltered for a split second, her lips parting in a silent breath of pain. Across the room, Robyn's sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. She quickly covered her mouth, shaking her head as silent tears streamed down her face. Kody remained completely still. His hands rested flat on the table, his expression unchanging, but his eyes, those wild, unpredictable eyes, burned with restrained fury. The judge continued. This court will lay responsibility, accountability, and ultimately the truth bare. We will hear from all of you in turn. And by the end of these proceedings, there will be no more secrets left unspoken. The strain was palpable. Even the off-stage audience of onlookers appeared to lean forward as a collective entity, moths to a flame. The judge leaned back, interlacing his fingers. Counsel, you may proceed with opening statements. Kody's attorney stood first, his tone firm but controlled. Your Honor, members of the court, he started. The case isn't about blame. It's about the profound pain and multifaceted relationships inherent in a family this large and unusual. My client, Kody Brown, is a man who has been demonized by the media, but today we will prove that he isn't the monster everyone makes him out to be. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some jeered openly. Others nodded in agreement. But before the lawyer could proceed, Christine's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, she snapped. What this case is about is neglect, betrayal, and loss. We will establish that Kody Brown's decisions, his actions contributed directly to the heartache and tragedy we are all here to confront. The words cut the courtroom like a knife. Christine's attorney spun, pointing to the three women. These women have been silenced long enough. Today they speak. Today the truth will be heard at last. Christine's eyes were closed, and she took a shaking breath as she set about to relive the worst hours of her life. Kody moved for the first time, hissing anger and something else, something darker, fear at her. The judge nodded. Very well. Let the testimony begin. The first witness was to be called. The audience waited with bated breath, its anticipation of the impending explosion. But none of them could act before Robyn's sobs suddenly became louder. All heads turned as she collapsed in her seat, her shoulders quivering uncontrollably. Please, she whispered, though she couldn't indicate anyone to whom she was speaking. Please don't make me do this. Christine's eyes became cold, her tears transforming into anger. You will do this, Robyn, she said, her tone low but forceful. For Garrison, the courtroom returned to silence, and in that instant it was evident this was no mere trial. It was the ultimate showdown for the truth. The judge raised his gavel for a third time. Witnesses, rise to the stand. The impact of the gavel reverberated in the room like a last warning shot. The storm had commenced officially. The judge's gavel cracked loudly, sounding like the crack of a gunshot through the crowded courtroom. Christine Brown, the judge stated, his voice firm and authoritative. Please stand. The room seemed to shift as every eye was focused on Christine. The groan of her chair seemed thunderous in the stillness as she slowly got to her feet. For an instant, she faltered, her hand shaking as it was raised over the wooden barrier next to her. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't just walking toward the witness stand. She was walking back into years of pain, back into moments she had tried desperately to forget. Janelle reached out and gently squeezed Christine's hand. You've got this, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Christine nodded, though her lips trembled. I have to do this, she whispered back. For Garrison? As Christine walked forward, Robyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her puffy eyes wrenched between Christine and Kody as if she needed to say something but couldn't. Kody sat stock still. He didn't budge an inch. He had his hands tightly gripped on the table, his jaw set. Christine walked to the witness stand. The bailiff walked with her, holding a small Bible in his hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Christine swallowed hard, and breathed softly. I do. As she sat, she breathed deeply, steadying herself, but even sitting, her hands laced together tightly in her lap, a clear indication of the hurricane brewing inside of her. The judge nodded her a small, almost gentle nod. Go on, he told Christine's attorney. Christine's attorney, A tall woman with kind eyes made her way to the stand cautiously. Christine, she started gently. I know this is hard, but we must hear your story in your own words. Can you tell the court about your relationship with Garrison? Christine's lips quivered as she struggled to speak. There was a pause. Then another. At last she breathed. Garrison was my light. Her voice cracked on the final word, and she rushed to cover her mouth, weeping openly. The audience shifted restlessly, some brushing away their own tears. Christine held a tissue and went on, her voice trembling but full of love. Garrison was a ball of energy from the moment he was born. He had this laugh, this huge, gorgeous laugh that could light up a room and make the gloomiest day seem sunny. A fleeting smile crept across her face for a moment before it dissolved back into grief. He wanted to be a protector. You know, even as a little boy, he would defend his siblings. He always put others first. Christine stopped, looking over at Janelle, who was crying quietly, tears streaming down her face. Janelle and I, we had that bond with him. Christine whispered. We raised our children together. We thought we were providing them with this big, loving family. Her voice turned hard at a moment's notice, anger surging through the pain. But Kody, she looked directly at him. Kody wasn't there. The room pulled tight at once. Everyone's eyes darted to Kody, who sat motionless, though his mouth was drawn into a thin line. Christine's attorney inched forward. Christine, what are you saying by he wasn't there? Christine's voice was now rising, stoked with years of pent-up anger. I mean, he was physically present, but emotionally? She shook her head. He was gone. Totally gone. Unless it was Robyn and her kids. Kody had no time, no love, no attention for anyone else. Robyn gasped openly, her hands shaking as she covered her mouth. Christine did not even look at her. She remained intent, set on finally revealing her truth. There's one night that haunts me, Christine went on, her voice cracking. It was just a few weeks before Garrison died. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge relaxed forward. Christine's fingers clutched the rails of the stand so hard that her knuckles paled. Garrison sat at our kitchen table one night. His head was in his hands, and I knew something was amiss. Her breathing caught as she recollected. I asked him what was wrong. He would not tell me at first. Then he gazed at me with tears in his eyes and said, Christine's voice broke entirely. She covered her lips, weeping. Janelle cried out from her chair, covering her face in her hands. The attorney moved in, her tone soft. Take your time, Christine. What did he say? Christine brushed away her tears with a trembling hand and struggled on. He said, Mom, Dad doesn't even see me anymore. Unless I'm in trouble, I don't exist to him. Gasp filled the courtroom. A woman in the audience grasped her chest. Even the reporters dropped their cameras, shocked at the unvarnished anguish in her voice. Christine's whole body quivered as she went on. He pleaded with me to do something for him. He complained that he didn't know why Kody loved Robyn's children better than him. He felt he was not good enough, that he was not worthy of his dad's love. On this point, Christine's voice broke into wrenching sobs. Janelle sprinted forward, but the bailiff restrained her gently, shaking his head. Christine's attorney provided her with a tissue, but Christine waved it off, banging her hand against the wooden railing. This was not neglect, she exclaimed. This was emotional abuse. My son was drowning in anguish, and Kody didn't even realize. Because he was too busy playing perfect husband to Robyn. Robyn cried out softly in her seat, shaking her head. No, she breathed hoarsely. Christine, please. But Christine wasn't done. Her anguish had become a tempest. The last time Garrison saw his father, she said, speaking low and cold. Kody screamed at him. He told Garrison he was a disappointment, that he needed to learn to act like Robyn's kids if he wanted respect. The crowd gasped again. Robyn gave a cry and fell forward, her body shuddering. Kody's jaw worked hungrily, yet he remained quiet, holding the table so hard it seemed as though he might break it in two. Christine faced the judge now, her face streaming with tears. My son died thinking his father disliked him. He died thinking he wasn't good enough. And I will never forgive Kody for that. The judge's expression softened for a moment, but his voice did not waver. Christine, thank you for your testimony. But Christine wasn't through yet. She focused all her attention back on Kody, her anger and sorrow shaking in her voice. You always said this family was about love. Kody, she spat. But love doesn't play favorites. Love doesn't leave children behind because they're inconvenient. Love doesn't ruin everyone else just to make one person happy. She waved wildly at Robyn, who was crying hard. You chose her. And you chose her kids. And in doing that, you shattered the rest of us. Christine's last words sliced through the courtroom like a knife. And now, Garrison is dead. And that's on you. The courtroom descended into pandemonium. Reporters yelled questions. People in the gallery wept. Others screamed for justice. The judge pounded his gavel over and over, yelling, "Order, order!" Christine collapsed into her seat, utterly exhausted. Janelle enveloped her in her arms, hugging her close as both women sobbed together. Kody sat still, his face white, his breathing ragged and uneven. For the first time, there was a glimmer of something in his eyes. Not anger, not defiance, but fear. The judge finally re-established order. Thank you, Christine. You may be seated. As Christine was led back to her seat, Robyn stood slowly, shaking. The judge's voice cut through the tension. Robyn Brown, please come forward. The room was silent once more. All eyes were on Robyn as she proceeded. Each step weighed with foreboding. The whole courtroom waited with bated breath. As Robyn Brown stood up, her body shook uncontrollably, her legs wobbling under her long black dress. For a second, she seemed about to tumble down, before she reached the stand. The bailiff advanced to support her, but Robyn shook her head, mouthing, "No, no, I can do it." She spoke in a whisper, her voice thick with tears. She held on to the witness stand railing, as if it were all that was keeping her upright. The room was so still that everyone could hear the rough gasps of her breathing. Even the faint rustle of paper from a reporter's notebook sounded deafening in the taut silence. Janelle put a protective arm around Christine, who was silently crying in her seat. Meri sat stiffly in front, her face pale and expressionless, but her hands writhing anxiously in her lap. In the back of the room, Kody sat immovable, his sharp eyes fixed on Robyn. There was no love in his eyes, only chill warning, a silent threat that everyone in the courtroom could sense. "Don't you ever cross me." Robyn swallowed hard, her eyes visibly shaken beneath his glare. The judge's voice interrupted the crushing silence. "Mrs. Brown," he stated firmly, "do you take an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God." Robyn's shaking hand hardly rose. I swear," she stuttered, tears running down her face. "Very well," the judge nodded. "Please sit down." As Robyn sank into the witness stand, she refused to meet Kody's gaze. Instead, she kept her eyes fixed on her lap, twisting the tissue clutched in her hands, until it ripped into pieces. Christine's attorney moved forward, speaking calmly but firmly. "Robyn, we understand that this is hard, but you are here today to tell for Garrison, for this family and for the truth. Tell us in your own words what you have seen." Robyn's shoulders trembled as she gasped for breath. For an instant, it seemed she wouldn't say anything at all. Then, her voice little more than a whisper, she started. I wanted this family to function," she said, her words shattering. "When I married Kody, I thought I was coming into something beautiful, something solid. I thought we could create a future where everybody felt loved." Her eyes fleetingly glanced towards Christine and Janelle. "I never wanted to steal him from anyone. I promise I didn't." Christine froze, her mouth opening as if to answer, but her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, telling her not to say anything. Robyn's voice wavered as she went on, but somewhere along the way, everything changed. "Kody," he began to distance himself from everyone else. "I thought at first that it was stress, or tension between the other wives, but it only got worse." Her breathing accelerated. "It was like, the longer time went on, the more he only concentrated on me and my kids. He no longer showed up for the others. Birthdays, School plays, holidays, it was always some excuse. There was always some reason he couldn't make it. Robyn's tears streamed freely, now splashing onto her shaking hands. And as for Garrison, she strangled, he was so hard on him. I pleaded with Kody to try and get it, to see how much Garrison needed him. But he refused to listen. The lawyer's tone softened. Robyn, can you tell me what you mean by hard on him? Robyn paused. She looked at Kody. His expression was inscrutable, his eyes blazing at her like fire. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a second it seemed like she might stay silent, but then something inside her snapped. Yes, she screamed suddenly, her voice echoing off the walls. Yes, I'll explain it. Because someone has to tell the truth, even if it destroys me. The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicking like mad. The judge banged his gavel. Order, order. Robyn wept vociferously, her hands grasping the witness stand's edge. Kody didn't neglect Garrison. He destroyed him. He made him feel worthless. Every time Garrison reached out, Kody pushed him off. If Garrison defended himself, Kody said he was being disrespectful. If he remained silent, Kody said he didn't care about it. There was no winning with him. Christine's wails filled the air once more. Janelle wrapped her arms around her, both women sobbing uncontrollably. As Robyn spoke, painting a heartbreaking picture. I told Kody. I begged him to spend time with Garrison, to tell him he loved him, to just show up. But Kody only loved me and my children. He said the others didn't get him, that they were too harsh. So he closed them out. Her voice dropped to a whisper filled with guilt. And I let him. Christine's head jerked up, her face smeared with tears contorting in rage. You let him? She snarled, trembling. You stood by and watched my son hurt, and you didn't say a word. Robyn's cries intensified, her body shaking uncontrollably. I thought I was helping everyone, she cried. I thought if I remained silent, if I could keep Kody calm, that maybe he'd get better. But he didn't. He just got worse and worse. The judge hammered his gavel again, bellowing order. There will be no outbursts. But the tempest of emotion could not be quelled. The courtroom was a whirlpool of anger and sorrow. The attorney leaned forward, her tone biting. Robyn, there is something the court must hear. On the evening of Garrison's passing, did you see anything noteworthy between Kody and Garrison? Robyn's hands flew to her lips. No, please. Don't ask me to, she whispered, her body swaying back and forth in the chair. You have to tell the truth. The attorney urged softly. It's the only way you can honor Garrison. Kody's chair screamed in protest, as he jumped up quickly, his voice thundering. Robyn, don't you? Sit down, Mr. Brown. The judge shouted, pounding the gavel. Kody's attorney yanked on his arm, sitting him down again. Robyn's tears had come to a breaking point. She pounded her hand on the stand, screaming in a raw, agonized cry. He was yelling at Garrison, she exclaimed. The last time they talked, Kody screamed at him, called him a disappointment, that he wasn't good enough, that he needed to be like my children, if he wanted to be loved. Christine cried out in sorrow, falling into Janelle. No, she wept, her wails ringing throughout the room. Meri had her hand clapped over her mouth, tears streaming down. Robyn was in hysterics now, her words spilling out like a flood that she could not contain. Garrison called me that evening, she admitted. He was crying. He told me he didn't know why his own dad disliked him. And I had no idea what to say. I said he wasn't true, that Kody loved him. But I lied, because I didn't want him to hurt more. Her whole body trembled as she slumped forward, crying into her hands. But he did know, she whispered. He knew, and now he's dead. The courtroom was in an uproar. Reporters yelled questions. Members of the audience cried openly. The judge pounded his gavel over and over, bellowing order, order. Through the din, Christine stood up, her anguish twisting into rage. You stood by and let him kill my son, she screamed at Robyn. And you, Kody? Her voice broke as she pointed straight at him. You murdered Garrison's soul before he ever died. Kody's face red, veins standing out on his neck. "That is a falsehood," he bellowed, pounding his fists against the table. "I did all I could for this family. It's not my fault. He couldn't manage enough." The judge bellowed, his own voice freezing everyone in their tracks. "One more display like that, and I will clear this courtroom." Robyn now sat silently, totally shattered. Her admission had ripped away the final shroud from the family's deepest secrets. There was no turning back. Christine's attorney rose, her tone steady but heavy with import. "Your Honor, we've heard Robyn Brown's allegations. But testimony is not sufficient. The court is entitled to evidence." She pulled a small tape recorder from her briefcase. "This is a tape of Kody Brown's last conversation with Garrison." The audience gasped. Even Kody's attorney seemed dumbfounded. The judge's tone was strict. "Play the recording." Robyn's eyes widened in horror as the attorney hit play. Kody's voice thudded from the speakers, icy and angry. "Garrison, do you think you can disobey me? You're nothing but a disappointment. Perhaps if you behaved like Robyn's children, I'd actually be proud of you." The recording stopped, leaving a deafening silence behind. Then pandemonium. Christine shrieked, falling to the ground. Janelle knelt at her side, weeping hysterically. Robyn buried her face and screamed. Even Meri, normally so cool, lost it, tears streaming as she grasped Christine's hand. Kody sat stiffly, his face white, his mouth opening and closing like a drowning man. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order! In this courtroom." But no amount of order could erase what was just discovered. The truth was finally out, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. The courtroom was utterly silent, the kind of silence that presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Everyone stared at Kody Brown, whose face had turned pale as the recording continued to echo in their minds. His voice, captured for all to hear, had stripped away every layer of control he thought he had over the narrative of his family's life. Christine sat on the edge of her seat, shaking violently, her tears soaking Janelle's sleeve. Meri's usually composed face was ghostly pale, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap it looked like her fingers might crack. Robyn hid her face in her hands, continued to weep uncontrollably, shuddering as if the burden of her admission and the tape combined had broken her physically. The judge stood forward, his piercing blue eyes sweeping the room. "This is the first time this court has ever heard such explicit testimony of emotional abandonment," he said, his tone solemn. "We are here to decide not just accountability, but the degree to which this neglect led to tragedy." The judge paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle like a storm over the room. Kody's fingers drummed on the table, and for the first time, he remained silent. His jaw, once set in defiance, now trembled slightly. Christine's attorney rose, her back straight, exuding authority and contained rage. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice firm in the midst of the turmoil in the room. "The court has just witnessed testimony from Robyn Brown, also supported by a taped call. That evidence clearly shows a pattern of emotional abuse, neglect, and special treatment that specifically damaged Garrison Brown." There was a murmur in the courtroom, but the judge held up a hand, and the room fell silent immediately. "Go on," the judge snapped. Christine's attorney faced back into the courtroom. "The effect of Kody Brown's behavior reaches beyond Garrison. His favoritism of Robyn and her children is apparent, and it divided the family to their very core. The neglect over time caused irreparable harm to everybody else's feelings. But Garrison, the innocent child in the middle, was hardest hit." Robyn caught a glimpse over her hands, her pink, puffy eyes flashing towards Kody. For the first time, she addressed him in person, her voice barely audible above the collective intake of breath of the courtroom. "Kody," she told him, her voice shaking but resolute, "you made him feel invisible. You made him feel less than. And I didn't stop you. I allowed it. I said nothing because I was frightened. Frightened of what you'd do if I told the truth." Kody's expression became stern, his fists bunched, quivering on the table. Christine's attorney moved forward, her voice rising, resounding in the courtroom. "This court now has evidence and testimony. We will not discount the fact that Kody Brown's actions or inactions created a poisonous atmosphere that resulted in the death and suffering of his child. At this point, Janelle could hold it no more. She wept bitterly, falling against Christine, shuddering uncontrollably. Meri reached out and put a hand on both of their shoulders, nodding in acknowledgement of the common pain. Robyn, still standing at the stand, shook her head in shock at what was happening. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I worked at trying to control everything, it would keep the family safe, she explained. But it didn't. And now it's too late for Garrison. The judge pushed his glasses up onto his nose, his face stern and unrelenting. Counsel, what additional evidence do you have to present to the court? Christine's attorney grabbed into her briefcase and produced a folder of messages, emails, and photographs. These are accounts of Kody Brown's dealings with Garrison, she told the court, holding them out for them to view. They indicate repeated disregard, neglect, and favoritism to Robyn's children over Garrison. The courtroom whispered with the voices of those present as the papers were shown on the monitor. Even some reporters had tears shining in their eyes. The evidence was absolute. Kody's attorneys looked around nervously, papers shuffling, whispering fiercely at him. But Kody was mute, eyes blank ahead, the color sapped from his face. Robyn, shaking but firm, spoke once more. Each birthday Garrison waited for you, Kody. Each milestone, each school play, each little win, he needed you there. And you weren't. You prioritized her children over him. And now? She broke. He's dead. The court audience was filled with whispers, the tension in the air insistent. Christine's attorney addressed the judge, her voice authoritative. Your Honor, we request the court to take into account the emotional impact and the clear connection between Kody Brown's conduct and the destruction of this family. The evidence is unequivocal. There is no room here for doubt. The recorded phone call combined with Robyn Brown's testimony depicts pictures of calculated emotional abandonment and preferential treatment that helped bring about Garrison's pain and death. The judge's eyes narrowed as he directed his gaze at Kody. Mr. Brown, he stated in a cold, precise tone, you have been quiet through this testimony. Do you have anything to say on your own behalf? Kody's mouth opened, then closed once more. He swallowed hard, the words caught in his throat. His attorneys nudged him, telling him to talk, but he shook his head. The courtroom witnessed the vulnerable side of Kody Brown for the first time. No excuses, no bluster, only a man faced with the result of his actions. The judge's eyes roamed over the women, resting on Christine, Janelle, Meri, and Robyn. The court is aware of the tremendous pain and suffering each member of this family has gone through, he said, voice weighed down. But it is the responsibility of this court to investigate the part played by Mr. Kody Brown in bringing about the conditions that resulted in such suffering. One reporter leaned over to the individual sitting beside them and whispered, "This is worse than I thought. The tension is crazy." Christine, still shaking, stood and addressed the court again. "Kody doesn't just deserve to be held accountable," she said, her voice growing strong despite her tears. "He deserves to know what it feels like to lose a child, to watch the destruction he caused unravel before him. And he will. Today, the truth is coming out. No more lies, no more excuses, no more pretending." Robyn, sniffling away her tears using the shredded tissue in her hand, gazed at Kody again. "You asked me to guard you," she said, breaking again, "but I can no longer guard you. Not from the truth. Not from yourself." The courtroom seemed to be splitting with emotion. Each gasp, each sob, each whispered comment constructed the tension further. Then Christine's attorney addressed the court again, her voice definitive, nearly ritualistic. "Your Honor, we have offered testimony, evidence, and tape. The court now has all the information needed to make a ruling regarding Kody Brown's involvement in the disintegration of this family. There is no more hiding. There is no more denying." The judge leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples briefly. "This court has heard enough to know the seriousness of Kody Brown's conduct," he said deliberately, slowly. "The emotional harm, the neglect, the preferential treatment, and the ensuing tragedy, these are unmistakable." Kody's face, which had been so red with anger and defiance, now was pale and immobile. His hands shook as he placed them on the table. Robyn, Christine, Janelle, and Meri, all women who had carried their grief in silence for so long, now felt the power of the truth in their hands. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding crack. "This court will take a short recess before rendering judgment," he announced. "Everyone remains in place. The truth has been laid bare, and the consequences will follow." As the gavel echoed, Robyn slumped forward, weeping uncontrollably. Christine embraced Janelle, both of the women trembling as the storm of emotion in the courtroom hit its climax. Kody sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the ground, seeing for the first time that there was no going back from here. The truth was out. The foundation of the family had broken, and the courtroom witnessed the coup de grace. The courtroom was quiet again, an electric stillness that seemed almost palpable. Each individual in the room appeared to be standing still, holding their breaths as they awaited the moment that would determine everything. At the defense table, Kody Brown was white-faced and shaking. His knuckles were white as his hands clung to the edge of the highly polished wood, as if grasping for the table could in some way help anchor him against the tempest of his own guilt. Robyn Brown sat alone, drained and broken. Her face burned and puffed, her body shaking under the burden of what she had just disclosed. Christine, Janelle, and Meri stood together, quiet but rigid, awaiting justice to finally be dispensed. The judge appeared, robes billowing, and the room automatically stood. "Take your seats," he barked. His tone was firm but contained the weight of finality. When the room had quieted, the judge leaned forward, piercing eyes on each family member. "This court has heard moving testimony, listened to tapes, and weighed evidence that in vivid detail outlines neglect, favoritism, and emotional damage." The judge paused, as if leaving the words to hang suspended in the air like a thunderhead. "All sides have had their turn to speak, and the truth is out there for everyone to see." Kody gritted his teeth, and he finally worked up the courage to raise his eyes. He glanced around the room, at the vacant chairs of his shattered family, at the cameras that were recording every detail, and at the women who had at one point trusted him. For the first time, there was no defiance in his eyes, only fear. The judge's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Kody Brown, the court finds that your actions or lack thereof directly contributed to the emotional suffering of your children, and most tragically, the death of Garrison Brown." Gasps erupted throughout the courtroom. Some people covered their mouths in shock. Others whispered frantically, disbelief etched across their faces. Kody's hands were trembling, his eyes wide in horror and desperation. This isn't true," he whispered, almost inaudibly. The judge's eyes did not falter. "Silence," the judge ordered. "This court sees the hurt and suffering inflicted upon Christine, Janelle, Meri, and Robyn. It sees the destruction visited on Garrison, who was subjected to neglect, emotional abuse, and favoritism for the duration of his life." Christine's body shook as she listened. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Janelle leaned forward, gripping her hands, her lips trembling. Meri remained stoic, but her eyes glistened with tears. Robyn, finally looking up, whispered, "It's over." But the judge wasn't finished. "Based on the evidence brought before it, this court holds that Kody Brown is legally liable for the emotional distress caused to his family and the gruesome events that led to the death of Garrison Brown." The courtroom was in an uproar. Reporters yelled out questions, camera bulbs flashed, and witnesses murmured in shock. Kody's attorneys rushed about, attempting to quell the disturbance, but even they couldn't suppress the severity of the verdict. Kody sat frozen, stunned, the weight of the judgment crashing down on him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Christine finally stood, her body trembling, but her voice strong. "This is what happens when someone puts their own desires above the children they're supposed to love," she said, her words sharp and filled with raw emotion. "You wanted to dominate us, Kody. You wanted to control us. But the truth always surfaces." Janelle nodded, her voice cracking as she spoke. "You made Garrison feel invisible, unwanted, unloved, and now, we all know who you truly are." Meri was calm, but cutting in tone. "Your actions destroyed this family, Kody. But today, the court has given us a voice. Today, the truth prevails." Robyn, her body still shaking, finally said something, directly speaking to Kody. "I tried to protect you," she whispered, her tone low but shaking. I kept quiet because I feared. But I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't let Garrison's agony be concealed. Kody's hands drooped to the table. For the first time, he was totally defeated. He had worked years to manipulate the story, to present himself as a devoted father and husband. But now, in court, the reality had destroyed that facade. The judge lifted his gavel for the last time. This court's decision is a reminder that justice and truth cannot be stifled. The harm caused to this family is deep, but the court recognizes the strength of those who testified truthfully. The gavel crashed down loudly, ringing through the hushed courtroom. Kody remained paralyzed, staring at the ground, his mind whirling but speechless. His empire of dominance had fallen. The family he had attempted to control now rallied against him. Their sorrow turned into one collective force that the court could not disregard. Christine embraced Janelle and Meri tightly, tears streaming down her face freely now. There was a feeling of relief for the first time in years, although it was mixed with the sorrow of loss. Robyn, shaken, wiped away her tears and gazed around at the women who had once been her competition. "We made it through this together," she breathed. "And now, perhaps we can begin to mend." The courtroom gradually emptied, reporters making their way out to share every detail. Cameras panned in on the vanquished figure of Kody Brown, now divested of his persona, while the women departed as one, heads held high in spite of their sorrow. Outside the courthouse, sunlight stung her eyes after the claustrophobic tension within. Christine, Janelle, Meri and Robyn stood together at long last. No words at first, only a mutual comprehension of what had been lost, what had been suffered, and what might yet be regained. Christine was the one who spoke first. "We might never see Garrison again," she whispered, "but we can honor him. By living, by telling the truth, by ensuring his tale is never forgotten." Janelle nodded, her eyes still shining with tears. "Justice can never bring him back," she said, "but at least the world is now aware of the truth. And that counts." Meri said nothing but squeezed their hands. Sometimes words weren't needed. The silence between them was loud enough. Robyn, shaking still, continued, "We all share guilt, pain and sorrow. But today we get to breathe at last." The press surrounded the courthouse, filming every tearful instant. But within their hearts, something was different. They'd weathered the storm. They'd weathered the lies, the deceit, and the heartache. And they'd told the truth. Kody Brown was left behind, a shattered figure in the courtroom. His name, his authority, and the family he once dominated had been revealed for what it really was: an insecure house, constructed upon secrecy, favoritism and indifference. And as the women emerged from the courthouse, heads held high, the world beyond felt different, lighter, freer. The truth had prevailed, the lies had fallen, and even though the family would never be the same, they had regained their voices, their stories and their power. Far in the distance, the wind sighed down the streets, bearing with it the last whispers of a courtroom fight that would be remembered for decades to come. This wasn't merely a verdict. It was the end of a nightmare, and the start of a long, wrenching but authentic healing. The courtroom doors shut behind them. The storm had passed, but the scars and the lessons of that day would be permanent.